Hey. Welcome into Illini Drive. Sorry for the noises, everybody. I think we should be good to go now. It's not Monday morning. It is Monday evening, but that was a classic tune from the Mamas and the Papas. Hope you enjoyed it. But now we're going to dive into some Illini sports talk. Easy transition there. I'm Kevin McCarthy alongside Peter Bailey-Wells, Ryan Wilson, Jeff Omer, and Will Gerard. You can follow us on Twitter at Illini Drive. We'll have plenty of good stuff on there throughout the show. Interact with us, tweet us your comments, questions, whatever. We also love to interact with you guys on the phone lines. If you have any questions about Illini football, give us a call right away at 217-337-1071. Once again, 217-337-1071. Call if you've got questions, comments, whatever. We'd love to hear from you. I don't know if our mics are working at all.
I think we're only going to have mics 1 and 2 for today, guys.
Well, we're adaptable here on Illini Drive, so that's all right. We'll be okay.
Yeah, let's dive into some Illini football talk here as we pass these microphones around. Sorry for the technical difficulties, folks, but we will. It'll be a much smoother show from here on out, unlike the Illini football team. That was not a smooth show on Saturday, as they were absolutely crushed. What's the word? Shellacked, wrecked, ruined, dismantled,
Stomped,
beat up,
broncoed.
Had the boat rowed all over them. I don't know. I'm out. Anyway, they got wrecked. So I will start by saying this question. What was the most disappointing aspect of the game from an offensive perspective, starting with you, Jeff? One area on the offense that really, really bothered you with what you saw.
It's just the overall fluidity of that offense. That's whether it's the run game or the passing game, just they can't get both to work at the same time, and that's what's been most frustrating for me to see. Even though Wes Lunt was able to put up his highest passing yardage of the season this past game, they clearly couldn't get anything going on the ground game with just 3 total rushing yards. So that's got to be just the most frustrating thing for me, just the lack of balance that the offense has been able to display so far, especially against teams that aren't even Big Ten opponents and opponents that they should be prepared to play against. So I think moving forward, that's got to be the biggest area of concern, just that inability to really get both areas of the offense going and going at an even pace as well.
I think for me it was the sense of urgency. Lovie talked a lot about wanting his teams to finish well after the North Carolina loss, and I really just didn't. It didn't feel like there was any urgency, especially up front. That Big Ten offensive line, albeit with some injuries, got pushed around, and they, you got to protect Wes Lunt. He's your meal ticket. Didn't play perfect, and we'll talk about Wes more as we go forward here in today's show, but just the lack of urgency from especially the offensive line. And then again, I know injuries are a real pain up front, but this is a team from the MAC with MAC athletes, albeit a well-coached bunch of MAC athletes, but, it didn't feel like there was that kind of fire, desperation that this team should have when losing to a team in the Mid-American Conference.
Yeah, and as you talk about a lack of urgency from the Illini, on the other sideline, you got a coach doing push-ups, sprinting up and down the sideline. PJ Fleck at one point caught a punt that went out of bounds. I mean, he was ridiculous. He
sprints his team up and down the sideline between quarters. The guy, it was ridiculous to the point of it's almost ludicrous. And then you watch his team beat Illinois by 23 points, and you go, maybe there's something to that.
Yeah, if you're 3-0, you can be as big of an idiot as you want. I'm fine with him running up and down the sidelines on away turf like that because he was beating up a Big Ten team, and they're from the MAC. So I was impressed with Fleck. Anyway, to answer the question, most disappointing aspect of the offense, you said the lack of fluidity, Jeff. Peter, you said the lack of urgency. I think for me it was just kind of the lack of a coherent offensive game plan. I really couldn't figure out what the game plan was in this game, and I feel like that's the second game in a row. I sort of felt the same way against North Carolina. West was checking down a lot, like you mentioned, which was disappointing, Peter. They weren't getting the ball downfield early on, and when they did start to get the ball downfield, West was overthrowing it. As you mentioned, Jeff, they never got a consistent running game going. So it was just, what was the plan of attack? I never really could figure that out, and it's maybe just because they couldn't execute in any facet of the game, then their game plan just went down the crapper. I don't know. I couldn't really figure it out, but it just seemed like, so I don't know if that the lack of a coherent game plan just has to do with a lack of execution. I'm not sure, but at the end of that game and at the end of the North Carolina game, my thought was, what were they trying to do? What did they see in film that week where they're like, okay, we're going to exploit X, and then we saw them try to do that in the game? I didn't see anything that really got me excited and thought, wow, the coaching staff really found anything here.
And I'm going to bring up a word that Peter dropped earlier to start off the show, saying desperation, and that's just something that I didn't see from the team out on Saturday, and of course not something that I saw from the team out a week ago on Saturday against North Carolina as well. I think that team really needed to have that sense of desperation this weekend, especially going into a bye week. This was a big game that they could have capitalized off of, getting into a bye week, going into Big Ten play off of a win. Feels a lot much better, I would imagine, and a lot different, to say the least, going in off of a loss now and a 1-2 record. I would have thought I would have seen a lot more desperation out from the Illini. It just didn't look like their heads were there, and they really understood the importance of that game.
Yeah, in a must-win game, you would like to see a heck of a lot more urgency than that. So that I had lots of disappointing things. I feel like we could go on and on about the offense. But let's flip it over to the defensive side of the ball. Was there one thing in particular that really jumped out at you? We can start with you, Peter, something that bothered you about the defensive side of the ball.
I think the thing for me, and this is again something that we saw against UNC, converting your pass rush momentum, because this team has been pretty darn good on the pass rush, a lot of sacks, a lot of tackles for loss, but converting that momentum to stopping the run, because Illinois would occasionally get a big, pass rush or a nice, pass breakup or something on first down, maybe second down, and then give up a 10-yard gash right up the middle to Bogan or Franklin. Like, they just were running wild around that, and I just didn't see, like, whether you're a great pass defense or not, whether you're a great run defense or not, whether you're good at stuffing gaps, and as compared to rushing off the edge and swim moves and stuff like that, like, there's got to be some consistency. There's got to be some coherence, some cohesion, some sort of like carryover from some of those strong pass rush and pass defense plays to the fact that they were porous, just totally like ripped to shreds by that running attack.
Yeah, the final total was 287 yards on the ground, and that had a huge effect on the time of possession, which ended up being 35 to 25 minutes in favor of Western Michigan. So I'm going to go right along with you, Peter, and just to add to it a bit, I'll say this. The most disappointing part of the defense for me was the fact that they just can't get off the field right now. I'll pull up the third down numbers. Illinois was actually good on third down. They stopped them on 9 out of 11 third downs, yet they're on the field for 35 minutes. It's like, how does that happen? And it just seemed like time and time again, I mean, They just couldn't stop them at all. Western Michigan's yards per carry, they got 5.3 yards per rush, and their passing game wasn't even that great. They only had 150 yards passing on 9 of 13 passes. So the fact that they're just running all over you like that just really got to be bothersome. Even by the half, but by the end of the game, it was horrible.
And that yards per carry number goes way up if you turn it to the running backs. The running backs' yards per carry is like 6.5. So that number is brought down by the quarterback getting sacked, by the quarterback, scrambling for a yard to get back to the line of scrimmage, whatever. Those running backs were carving up the defense. Every opportunity they had, it seemed like.
And as a result, they couldn't get off the field. And that was just frustrating for me, especially with how much talk we've had about this defense. The fact that they're not, maybe I didn't expect them to be as good as advertised, but I expected them to, against a MAC opponent, make that big push against that offensive line, win the battle in the trenches, and hold them for, fewer than 5 yards a carry.
And in terms of just getting off the field early, I'm wondering where the turnovers are from the defensive standpoint. This is the second game now in a row where the defense hasn't been able to cause any sort of turnover. I guess in NC that the safety could qualify as some type of change of possession, not necessarily a turnover, but still, I want to see when the defense is going to be able to step up and physically get themselves off of the field by making a big play and giving the ball back to the offense. The first possession of the game sticks out right in my head, where Taylor Barton missed an easy, could have been interception on the first possession of the game, really set the tone right away, hits off his chest in the incomplete pass. So just the inability to take advantage of any opponent's mistake is got to be really painful for that defense.
Yeah, and everybody's talking about the takeaways. All the reporters, they asked Lovie Smith, they asked Hardy Nickerson Sr., the defensive coordinator, Hardy Nickerson Jr., the starting middle linebacker, DeJuan Smoot. They're asking everybody, where are the takeaways? You guys talk about it all the time. And, I asked Hardy Nickerson Jr. that question, and he said that in practice, they're punching balls out all the time. They're picking off passes. They're creating takeaways time and time again. I'm starting to think maybe the only reason is because the Illini offense is so bad, and that's who they're going up against. I don't know. But, seriously, is that why the defense looks so good? Because they're going up against this offense? I don't know. But it's getting really frustrating with all this takeaway talk that, Lovie said that's what this defense does. And, he's said it 1,000 times. We create takeaways. We take the football away and try and score with it. Well, we haven't seen it so far. And you mentioned the one where Taylor Barton should have grabbed that one. There wasn't even that many of those plays, though, which is disappointing. The opportunities they had to create takeaways, they didn't capitalize. And, first of all, they didn't create enough opportunities to take the ball away.
And it also makes you you wonder about special teams momentum, too, because David Reisner continued to be pretty darn bad as the punter. A 13-yard punt at one point. Like you may as well, go for it on fourth down if you're going to punt for 13 yards. That's ridiculous. That kind of offense to defense momentum can make a difference, too. Even if your defense is not playing well, like we saw in that North Carolina game, what happened when Reisner pinned the Tar Heels back on the 2-yard line? Smoot made a tackle in the backfield, and they got a safety. So you fire up your defense if you put them in a better position. And when they're continually misfiring, when the offense is continually misfiring on third down, when the special teams units are not doing anything to get any momentum back, a game-changing play, nothing, you're leaving a defense that has already been on the field for a lot, like you pointed out, time-wise, has not played particularly well. There's no boost. There's nothing there to kind of reinvigorate the team at all.
And the only other of the team that could would be that fourth phase that Lovie's been talking about, the fans, and the fans aren't too interested right now either, and they probably shouldn't be.
All this talk is just getting me very scared for Nebraska.
Nebraska will be a lot of fun.
After this bye week up here.
It should be interesting. But you're listening to Illini Drive on WPGU 107.1, brought to you by the Illinois Fighting Illini. For tickets and information on the Illini, visit fightingillini.com or call 1-866-ILLINI1. Once again, fightingillini.com or call 1-866-ILLINI1 for more ticket information. We're going to leave that segment at that. When we get back, plenty more to talk about. We'll talk about the quarterback. That's who everybody's talking about. Will he be better? Can he be better? You'll hear our take on that. And then we'll do a lot of talk about the bye week. Lovie mentioned that they'll be recruiting, so we'll be talking about what that pitch might be and kind of where they might be having their focus before they play that game against Nebraska, like you mentioned, in just a couple of weeks. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back here on WPGU 107.1.
Hail to the orange. Hail to the blue. Hail alma mater, ever so true. We love no other. So let our motto be victory. Illinois, varsity. Fighting Illini football mini plans start at only $50. Secure your seat today by phone at 1-866-ILLINI1 or online at fightingillini.com.
We did not play the way we have to play going forward. Offensive line was a big part of that. I played the quarterback position. Has improved an awful lot, or we don't have a chance to win many games. It's as simple as that.
And welcome back into Illini Drive. And that was the voice of a very disappointed Lovie Smith. He was talking about the quarterback play, saying that if they want to win games, it has to be better. He obviously didn't put a name to that, but of course he's talking about number 12, Wes Lunt. Very interesting that Lovie said that because he doesn't do a whole lot of calling out his players, whether in praise or in criticism. He just doesn't do it that often. And while he didn't specifically say West there, he said our quarterback play, and only one guy has been under center so far this year. So it's just interesting to note that Lovie was so disappointed and actually went as far to mention it to the press after the game. So we'll start with that question. Can and will West be better? What do you guys think?
Yes, in short, but I don't know if he actually will be better. We don't have a lot to judge that will, I guess, make me feel more positive about him actually changing. I don't think there's much more time for him to actually improve as well. with the opponents that they're going to have coming up, I don't think it's reasonable to really expect a lot to change from West Lunt moving forward.
Just because of how much time he's already had to grow and develop, you mean?
Yeah, just because of how much time he's had, how much he really hasn't done in that time, and how much time he has now moving forward until the end of the season. I just don't think there's really much room for improvement now from West Lunt.
I think it's gonna these two next 2 weeks are gonna be really crucial. To be fair to Wes, he knows he hasn't played as well as he's had to. I mean, Lovie called him out, but I don't think Wes would say anything different about himself if asked.
Yeah.
And he hasn't, right? But I also think that he's learning a new offense, and these next 2 weeks, his bye week and the week leading to Nebraska, are going to be really, really crucial. Because look, he completed like 60% of his passes, and he, more than 200 yards. He had a touchdown on the flea flicker. He didn't play badly, right? He didn't really. He had the one interception, but his talent is all obvious and evident. But it's just a matter of adapting to not throwing horizontally on third down like he was so used to in this Bill Cubitt offense, dink and dunk offense. Like, and this again kind of goes to urgency. Like, you got to wing it, young man. Like, and Garrick McGee was barking, I think, in the third or fourth quarter about his sort of decision making to check down. Like, and to be fair, we're not totally clear on what McGee said because we didn't get McGee after the game. But from the looks of it, it's like, Wes, throw the ball downfield. Get it out there. It's tough with the offensive line being injured and inexperienced. He's maybe not always got the time that he wants or that he needs. But the young man's got an arm, and he can sling it. And there's got to be that urgency from Wes to use his talents and not just sort of settle for sort of, beep boop. Josh Ferguson was, I'm used to Josh Ferguson as my favorite target, and we'll just go from there.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's interesting because as the game was going along, I was thinking, yeah, Wes is playing pretty well, but the points weren't going up on the board. The only touchdown they scored was on that ridiculous reverse flea flicker long pass, touchdown. And the throw he made there wasn't very impressive. The guy was wide open. So as the game was going along, game was progressing, I'm thinking, Wes looks pretty good right now because as you mentioned, he didn't play a bad game. And I think that's important to note. He's not North Carolina, you could argue he played very poorly, but against Western Michigan, he didn't play bad. You can't point to these 10 throws or those were really bad decisions. It's not that he's making really bad decisions like the Jay Cutler decisions of just throwing balls where you're like, what the hell are you thinking? But it's more of a type of where he's not doing enough for them to actually win. He's not getting the ball vertical. He's constantly checking down. He just can't. He hasn't shown us that big play capability, though he has the big play receivers, it seems like. I mean, Malik Turner has developed into a very legitimate Big Ten wide receiver and a very, very good route runner. And while he was getting separation at times throughout this game on Saturday and against North Carolina, Wes can't find him. So I wouldn't say that right now Wes is playing bad, but he's just not doing much. He's not getting the ball vertical. He doesn't trust himself, it looks like. He has no poise in the pocket. He's thrown off his back foot. He's got to step up and make those throws confidently. Right now he's not.
And I think it's clear that the opposing defenses, by challenging Illinois' run game, just at least stop that run game and putting all the pressure on West Lunt, that he hasn't really stepped up to that plate. And at least in terms of delivering points and putting points up on the board, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to win you a game. And as a quarterback, that's your job, to get your team down the field and score a touchdown in the end zone. So going back to my point to where I don't think much will change from West, I'm worried when these Big Ten defenses now are going to be stacking up against the run. How is he going to respond, especially when he's on the road at a Big Ten stadium where there's other factors in play? If he's not able to do it here at home, especially against teams that aren't even in the conference, I'm worried, where is he going to show any improvement, especially if he's going to be facing only tougher opponents from here.
And so that's where this Nebraska game, I think, will be the point after which we can really answer this question for good, right? We'll really be able to know, because after that, there's no break in the Big Ten. And especially not for the way this Illinois team has things scheduled. There's no break. So if he's not playing the way he needs to be, I mean, Lovie said it himself in the quote leading into the segment. The quarterback play's got to improve a lot for us to win.
Yeah, and we'll see if the confidence comes back. I think a lot of fans, rightfully so, right now are just a little disappointed in Wes's play because of all the hype around him since he transferred from Oklahoma State, and all the hype around this guy being a legitimate NFL quarterback. All the hype, about the poise in the pocket, the big arm, all these things. You mentioned it, Peter. The talent is evident. The results are just non-existent right now. And so I think the fact that fans are upset about that, very reasonable. They should be. Wes needs to be better. Lovie was exactly right. Will he be better? I think Nebraska's a big test for him, and I think when he comes back again on home turf against Purdue, that's a game where he has to be really good, and we'll see if he can be. And so we'll move that into... We were just talking about that Nebraska game, so they got a little bit of time in between now and then, 11, 12 days. What's the biggest on-field, or what should be the biggest on-field focus in your guys' mind? Lovie mentioned that they're going to be doing some recruiting during this time off, but on the field, obviously this team has a lot to work on. We'll start with you, Jeff. Is there one thing in particular where you point to and say, they really need to be focusing and harping on X?
It's got to be just finding that balance between the run and the pass game on the offensive side of the ball. Getting 3 rushing yards is never going to, I would imagine, is never going to be good for any team.
You can't win a game with, I mean, unless you're,
Unless you got Tom Brady back there throwing all your balls on your
maybe, yeah, right.
But I don't think Illinois can afford to be one-dimensional offensively in the Big Ten. They're going to need to have the running game balanced with the passing game, and really have that dual threat there to keep the defense on their heels. We haven't seen that yet. We haven't seen Illinois' ability to balance those. It's either been one side or the other. And going into this bye week, they need to figure out a game plan to where those two can work off of each other and, where the pass game is able to work with the run game.
I mean, it's probably sort of cheating, excuse me, but I think that the biggest thing about this week is recruiting. I mean, not that this is a lost season, but no one thought they were going to win 10 games anyway, or no one who was sane thought they were going to win 10 games anyway. So it's not like they have to really salvage the season, because look, they could lose. It was a possibility that this team was going to lose 8 games, even if everybody stayed healthy and played okay, right? This is not just because of the nature of the schedule and the nature of the conference and stuff like that. So it's going to be more important for Lovie and his staff to maintain momentum recruiting-wise. Because you go in, if you're a recruit and you look at this game, they just lost to a MAC team, man. I don't want to come play at your school. It's like, well, Lovie's got to dispel that notion quickly. And he's got to do it this week. And that's what I think what he hopes to do. He's talked about that, that they're going to flood the country, I think were his words, after the loss this weekend, was they're going to flood the country this weekend. So, that's more important, I think, to me than – and it's unfortunate because there are a bunch of seniors on this team that deserve to have a winning season and deserve to – in their last hurrah, but if for the long-term strength of the program this week is much more about recruiting than anything else.
You're definitely right, and I don't think the fact that they've started out the season so poorly changes the recruiting pitch much. I don't think it has a huge effect on it, because I think the message from the beginning has been the same. I mean, you said it before the show, Peter. We were talking. These are a bunch of Bill Cubitt and Tim Beckman recruits. This is the same, team with no talent that we saw last year. They're just not that. They're not that talented. They're not that good. Now, where I was wrong about this team is that I thought the coaching would make a much bigger difference. It hasn't. There's something not translated in the football field, because right now they're undisciplined on both sides of the ball and on special teams. They're just not doing a whole lot right. They're not executing, and so some of that falls on the coaches, some of that falls on the players. Whatever. I thought this team was going to be better coached than they are, but I don't think that this does change the recruiting pitch too much for right now. I think all along you were selling the future. Let's say they would have won this game against Western Michigan and they were 2-1. Does that excite a kid more to come here next year? No, it's a non-conference win over a MAC team. And the fact that they lost, does it change it much? No. You still get to go play for Lovie Smith, who was an NFL coach for almost 20 years, and you also get to play, if you're a defensive player, you get to be coached by Hardy Nickerson, who was a 5-time All-Pro. Or on the offense, Garrick McGee, who has all the connections in the world, big-time college coach, and has some good NFL experience too. So it's just, the list goes on. I don't think it really changes the pitch very much. While it is disappointing for right now, for the seniors, for all that, I don't think that it has too much of an effect on recruiting. Let's move the question then to the Illini fans. Do you think this does, what's happening right now this season, does it have an immediate effect on attendance the rest of the way? And you can talk from a student perspective and overall, how full will Memorial Stadium be?
Well, I'll promise you this. I don't think we'll see it as full as we did against North Carolina again this season. I think that's a very, very realistic expectation to have. And quite honestly, I don't think we can expect Memorial Stadium to really be too sold out or packed at all. I would say the rest of the way going down for this season, unless Illinois starts to show some signs of improvement, and it starts with a quality win on the road in the Big Ten, I would say, in my opinion. But I think the fan base in general just needs to be patient. Like you said, Kevin, this isn't really Lovie Smith and his entire team yet, although they're working with players, and that's the talent that they have out on the field. That those aren't the players that they would have recruited or would have handpicked to put out there in the first place. So I think from a fan standpoint, the support may not be there in the stands, but I think in the heart it still should be there because things are changing. It's just going to take some time in Champaign.
I also think that, Lovie could take a page if he wanted to. I don't think he has to do this, but this was something that Bill Cubit always did that I always really liked, was the quad on Thursday, going and being on the quad on Thursday. And I know it's Lovie Smith, and maybe there's more of a logistical challenge there than if Bill Cubit is on the quad, but there's social media reaching out only goes so far if you're not winning, right? If you're winning, people will come, whether you reach out to them or not. Right. They will. And they've been very good about, I've talked about competency running amok, right? Josh Whitman, Lovie Smith, the social media, maybe the pregame runs with Josh Whitman, sort of going to booster clubs around the state, stuff like that. But especially as far as students go on the quad, Lovie. Like, I mean, maybe it's too, again, I don't know his life, I don't know his logistics, but go be on the quad for an hour on Thursdays from 12 to 1. You'll see a ton of people, and they'll see you, and they'll go, hey, yeah, Lovie Smith is our head football coach. Like, maybe something would happen this weekend. And even if the team goes 4-8, it's like Lovie Smith cares about that. Lovie entering the Union the day he was hired is probably of the 4 year of the 3 plus and soon to be 4 years of my college time spent around Illinois sports, the most excited I've ever seen anyone at the school about anything athletic was when Lovie entered the Union, and just everybody swell of enthusiasm. It's like your hair on your arm stands on end because it's like an electric room. I know he's not going to get that going on the quad, but why not? I don't know. What harm can it do?
Yeah, I think they should be doing it. I mean, it puts a face to the program, and get out there and hand some tickets out, Student tickets don't cost, what are they, $5 or $10? Go out and give some away, Tweet some photos out that Lovie's out there. Have Lovie go and... Selfies. Yes, Lovie can, take selfies with people, sign autographs, at least glad hand some people. And, he's going to get asked some tough questions. Answer those tough questions. Your team sucks right now, Lovie. So when people go out, and if you're out there and they're telling you that they suck, answer it. Yeah, we're not very good right now, but this is the vision. So if he gets out there on the quad, I think he has a chance to say, I understand what you guys are seeing right now. I know why you're disappointed, but let me tell you why you should buy in. Here's why you should buy in, because we have this vision for a team that perennially can compete for Big Ten championships. We have a vision for a team that can get into the top 25 and, maybe get to the Rose Bowl again, something like that. I know that that's the plan. That's what they're thinking. Go out there and sell that to students and tell them why they should buy in right now. And I think it's a great idea. Get out on the quad. I realize it's uncomfortable. I understand Lovie's a busy guy, whatever. He can't be that busy. He could easily go and spend an hour with some kids on the quad.
It's an hour. Yeah, it's an hour out of his week.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And I think that so many kids would get out there for selfies, autographs, all that stuff. You'd have people swarming him. I think it'd be a lot of fun. So I like that idea a lot. And we'll see if they take to it. I don't know. But we're going to head to a quick break here. You're listening to Illini Drive. When we get back, plenty more Illini football talk, and hopefully we can take some of your calls. 217-337-1071. Once again, 217-337-1071. Call us if you have any comments, questions, concerns, whatever. We'll get you on the air.
Hail to the orange. Hail to the blue. Hail alma mater, ever so true. We love no other, so let our motto be victory. Illinois. Varsity. Fighting Illini football season tickets start at only $99. Secure your seats today by phone at 1-866-ILLINI1 or online at fightingillini.com.
First and 10, Illinois from their own 44. Vaughn is the back. Gets the handoff. Now a reverse. Hands it to Turner. Flips it back to Lunt. Ainsley Johnson's wide open right sideline. He's got it. 30, 20, touchdown!
Howdily diddly neighborinos, how we doing? Thanks for checking us out here on Illini Drive. I should say on WPGU 107.1. But yeah, you're listening to Illini Drive. We're having a lot of fun here. If you just heard that little soundbite, that was the voice of Brian Barnhart from WDWS announcing the one good thing that happened against Western Michigan. They ran that crazy toss, reverse, flea flicker bomb that worked. But honestly, in my opinion, Jeff just made a good point. You're right. That was bad that they pulled that one out. They should have saved that one for a bigger game. Although I will say this, if you pull that out against a better team like a stingy Michigan defense, I could see that going so wrong. Exactly. I could see West just getting absolutely massacred from behind as soon as they do that flea flicker. But yeah, it was an exciting play. It was fun.
I think that play took too long to develop as well if they wanted to.
You're nitpicking about the one touchdown they scored?
Yeah, because there's nothing positive to take away from it.
Yeah.
Really.
Well, anyway, we are going to try and talk about positives. I don't know if there are any. Some reporter asked that after the game. Is there any positive takeaways? And Lovie is like, no. He tried to think of something. He's like, no. And I don't know if there are or not, but let's dive into that. Is there anything, a specific player, maybe a position group, anything right now where if you're this coaching staff or even if you're a fan, you're thinking, yeah, at least I feel good about X?
I'd probably say the play of Malik Turner. He had a couple drops, which was a little problematic, but still over 100 yards is a pretty good day for a young man, who's been thrust into the number one receiver role with Mikey Dudek no longer.
I don't like the word thrust there, but
well, it's an expression. I'm not, using it in a different context than it's ever used. But again, Turner played well. Talked to him after the game. He clearly was in a horrible mood, which is interesting. And he sort of smiled at the mention of the flea flicker, but asking him questions like, "What do you guys got to do?" and his answer, and a lot of the answers for a lot of these guys was just, "We just have to play better." Like, we were just so bad, like they were just very despondent and very negative. And even Malik, 9 catches for over 100 yards was feeling the same way.
I think you're right, Peter. Just pulling out one thing that I am really going to keep my eyes on moving forward is the special teams play as well. Although it might seem insignificant in the long run, I want to see Ryan Frayne back there punting the balls for Illinois. I think he gives the team a good opportunity on offense and defense to really set up a scheme and to work on a team from there. And I think come Big Ten play, field position is going to be huge, especially when a team like Illinois is going to be facing an opponent that's most likely better and stronger than they are in every aspect of the game. Illinois will have to rely on good field position if they want to get out and survive on the road and even at home against these Big Ten teams, and the special teams play will be big for them.
Absolutely, and I like this question. What is the most surprising thing about this team right now? I'll answer that question first. Actually, I got a couple things that are really surprising me right now. The first, and it's been touched on in this show, is that the defense can't take a football away. They got a couple against Murray State, but that's not saying much when they're one of the worst teams in the FCS. They didn't take the ball away, the defense didn't, against North Carolina or against Western Michigan this past weekend. For all the focusing they've done on that, they claim they preach it on every single play in practice. The fact that they can't punch a ball out or they can't intercept a pass in 2 games consecutively, that's really surprising to me. And I thought this defense would be a lot better. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the lack of production from Keyshawn Vaughn. Kendrick Foster has surprised a lot of people, and he, it hasn't just been the big plays. He, of course, had the pair of 56-yard rushes, but he's also just been consistent. He's been very good, but Vaughn's production just hasn't been there yet. He had the one huge run against North Carolina, which kind of fluffed up his stats, obviously, but overall, he just wasn't very good. And I don't know if that falls more on the offensive line or more on him, but throughout the offseason, we heard time and time again, Keyshawn Vaughn's going to be our workhorse. We're going to give him the ball every single time, 25, 30 carries a game. They kept talking about how big of a sophomore year Keyshawn Vaughn would have. So far, he's not having it. That's been very surprising to me. So, I don't know. We'll see if either of those things improve. I'm not sure. But right now, takeaways and Keyshawn Vaughn, that's been surprising.
it's also been a little bit. I mean, you talked about penalties too, discipline. You know how well this team is coached. They haven't yet shown that they can. And Wes pointed this out against North Carolina. I think I keep coming back to it. Like responding to adversity. What happens when you get punched in the mouth? You know, I wrote this week that Illinois, Western Michigan came in and kicked Illinois in the teeth and then left the stadium 3 hours later with Illinois licking its wounds. It's like, they get hit and they fold. And you can't do that, especially not in the Big Ten. I mean, come on. There's got to be some life. Like I said, there's got to be a lot of urgency with this team. This is a talented group of seniors. For a team that isn't as talented as it might need to be to compete in the Big Ten, there's some talent on this roster. You got a defensive line full of talent. You got a quarterback full of talent. You got some seniors on the line who have a combination of talent and a lot of experience. You got to show us something. Illinois football has got to show us something to prove that they're more than just a perennial 4-5 win team.
And I think that's the scariest thing if you're an Illinois fan moving forward is the fact that you haven't seen your team fight when they've been down or been thrown a punch, whatever you call it. When things go off the script, you haven't been able to see the team respond appropriately so far this season, and all these games have happened at home. Just wait till it's on the road, and you don't have a single fan in that stadium to root for you. So when one thing goes wrong, everything could be going wrong from that point, and it's just a scary thought to see that all these problems are happening at home and what could be happening in just a couple weeks when it's on the road now.
And talking about responding to adversity, it's interesting that you guys bring that up. Wes Lunt was posed the question after the North Carolina game. He said, what does this team have to prove, and what's been kind of the most disappointing thing for you so far? What do you guys have to do differently then moving forward to fix that? And he said, this team has never responded to adversity well, and we need to prove that. And it's interesting that he even went as far to say that. So I think this team knows, and you mentioned, Peter, they got kicked in the teeth and they folded up right away. And that's a MAC opponent. What are you going to do against the Big Ten? It's a good question. And I think the other thing is, Peter, you're mentioning all the talented seniors. Next year, there's not going to be a whole lot of talent on this roster, barring an unbelievable recruiting class, but I doubt that'll happen. And the other thing is, when you bring in a really good freshman recruiting class, it can only have so much effect on the game, because once you get into a college, football diet program, weightlifting program, all these things, you get so much bigger, stronger, faster. You need players to get some experience in college football. You can't just take a bunch of freshmen out on the field and win a whole bunch of games. It takes time to rebuild a college football program.
That's where football and basketball are very, very different, right? You can't just plug guys in straight out of high school like you can Duke and Kentucky and one and done and see going to the NBA. That doesn't happen. Like you talked about, size and experience matter so much more.
You're saying size matters?
We're not going to get into that now. It's already 6:47. Too late into the show, Kevin, for you to be making jokes like that. But yeah, I mean, and this team could be worse record-wise next year than they are this year. That's totally possible based on the people they're losing. We're complaining, we're sort of lamenting Wes Lunt's play now, but who plays quarterback next year is an even bigger question mark than whether Wes Lunt will play well for the rest of the season or not. So, again, I think that goes back again to the fact that they've got to recruit this week. Because they. Something's got to give to break Illinois from mediocrity, and I certainly don't think the boat has rowed, if you will, rather than sailed. I don't think the boat has rowed at all on Lovie Smith being a terrific coach. If you're thinking that after 3 games, let me give you a reality check. You're being silly. There's nothing wrong with Illinois football that can't be fixed by deliberate recruiting and coaching. But that has to happen, and that has to happen starting now. There's no grace period here, and I think that people have gotten this Lovie Smith effect. There's a grace period, honeymoon. There's no honeymoon period here. Things have got to start now, because you know who's also coaching in the Big Ten? Jim Harbaugh and Urban Meyer and Kirk Ferentz and Mark D'Antonio. Although Iowa did just lose, so I don't know why I said Kirk Ferentz. But guys that know how to coach, know how to recruit, and know how to win games, bowl games, national championships. There's no time to lose here. And Lovie Smith's got time. We are years, if not a decade, from talking about Lovie Smith's job security. But they have got to start now.
Yeah, and you would hope that fans wouldn't start, heading for the exits here. Any fan you should be surprised to some extent with the way they've gotten beaten. But when you looked at the schedule at the beginning of the season, it was very realistic that they were going to go 1-2. You knew they were going to beat Murray State, but you also knew that North Carolina was going to be a really, really tough game. I mean, really tough. I think the fact that they hung around through 3 quarters was pretty impressive. And also, if you're an educated college football fan, you knew that Western Michigan coming to town wasn't going to be easy. I mean, I thought they could start out 2-1. I even thought maybe they could upset North Carolina, start out 3-0. I was very wrong about that, but at the same time, I'm not too surprised with the record of 1-2. What I am surprised about is the execution on the field. But as you mentioned, Peter, it doesn't change anything long term. I mean, they didn't bring in Lovie Smith to come in and win 10 games this year. They brought in Lovie Smith to re-energize the program and turn things around in the long haul. So I think everybody should take a collective deep breath here, realize that it's game 3. It's the bye week. As Lovie mentioned, this is the first quarter of the season. There are 12 games in a season. 3 are done. 1 quarter of the season is done. We got 3 quarters to go, or they got 3 quarters to go, I should say. And there's plenty of room for improvement. And they're not buying in on this season. They got plenty of time. I don't even know if they'd be buying in on the 3rd or 4th season, as you mentioned, Peter. You got to let all your recruits get in and everything. But once again, you're listening to Illini Drive on WPGU 107.1, brought to you by the Illinois Fighting Illini. For tickets and information on the Illini, visit fightingillini.com or call 1-866-ILLINI-1. Once again, fightingillini.com or call 1-866-ILLINI-1 for more ticket information. That was a lot of Illinis. Illini. That was hard to say. Anyway. With all the talk we've been doing about, I know you can't talk into that microphone. With all the talking that we've been doing about the negatives, I'd like to talk about a couple of positives, and let's zero in on a few players. I want to start with Malik Turner. Peter, you talked about him before the show. What have you seen from Malik, and what's going on with him? I know it's one of few bright spots, but...
Well, I talked about him during the show, too, but...
Oh, yeah.
To get into it a little bit more I think it's a matter of people not quite having a handle on what was going to happen without Lovie Smith, without Mike Dudek. People thinking that Hardy and Turner were going to be the 2 studs. Justin Hardy hasn't proven that he can do. I mean, he's got speed and he's got size, and but he just, he's a very player right now. He's not proven that he can do the things that he needs to do to be a top guy. And so Turner's dropped a few passes, but when you talk about attitude, Turner seems to have attitude on the field, right? And I don't mean like trash talk. I just mean there's something different about the way he's moving. There's a sense of urgency. Whatever it is, he's playing differently than and Kendrick Foster's the same way. There's a sense of urgency when he gets the football. Even if he's being brought down after 2 yards, every run has a sense of urgency. And that sounds sort of silly because it's sort of like I know it when I see it kind of thing. But there's not a lot of that right now. And so I think that's why Foster and that's why Turner are succeeding in some limited capacity even, is because they are very aware of the dire, not dire, but they're very aware of the immediacy of this season.
So I guess hearing that point, Peter, I just want to ask you directly after, where does someone like Wes Lunt stand then in that picture and that thought process?
That's tough to say. I mean, he's had not a lot of moments of that in his career at Illinois. I don't feel like he's had a lot of moments of urgency. You watch that last drive against Nebraska last year, and you can tell he is very locked in. He understands why he's doing what he needs to be doing, the time, the importance of it. But, you can't be checking down on 3rd and 15 in the 4th quarter of a game you're losing to a team in the MAC. That just doesn't. And then this is the play that Garrick McGee barked at him from the sideline. It's like, and some of the crowd started booing too because it's sort of just like, you almost want him to do the Brett Favre thing, throw an interception and get pissed off, right? Like. Well,
because checking down makes it look like you don't care.
To a degree, yes, and I know that Wes does care. To be very fair to Wes, he definitely is invested, and he's definitely bought it, and he definitely cares. But I don't know. Personally, in my impression of how things evolve on a football field, there is a level of visible emotion that I think matters, especially if you're the quarterback and you're the leader. your confidence, a little bit of swagger can make a difference and help your team get into a rhythm. And if people are looking to you to set the tone, then they see the tone there rather than sort of seeing placid. Again, Wes is very even-keeled. He's very consistent. But, a spike in emotion isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Going off that point as well, I'm wondering if that's what Lovie is hinting toward when he's saying that the quarterback play needs to step up. Is it just something as simple as that where Wes's mentality needs to be different? He needs to have a more killer mentality where he's going to be standing in that pocket picking apart defenses rather than thinking about how that defense is going to be picking apart him. If is that going – I do agree with you, Peter, where I think that Wes's mindset – is having a big impact on the lack of performance we're seeing on the offensive side of the ball for Illinois. And it could be something just as simple as that, just flipping on an emotional switch to get things going.
Yeah, and I also agree with that point. I think it's important. I think you were saying this, Peter, but just to make it clear, I don't think you're asking him to be anyone different. Westland's never going to be a fiery guy. He's never going to be P.J. Flecken up and down the sidelines. It's like it goes back to the Cutler argument. So many people in Chicago wanted Jay Cutler for all these years and still do. They want him to be somebody he's not. Well, Westland can't be a fiery leader. He's not going to stand up on top of a table and start shouting at people. He's not going to be screaming at referees and flipping out. When he gets sacked, he's just going to dust himself off maybe and get back up. That's the kind of guy he is. He's quiet. But I do agree with you that there has to be some level of change in the way you act and lead in a game like that specifically, and in the North Carolina game. But talking about the Western Michigan game, you're losing by a couple of scores to a MAC team, and you're still checking down, and we can't see the urgency. We don't see – I know that Westland is really competitive. You can see it when you interview him one-on-one, but we don't see it on the field. And I don't really – and I'm not saying he needs to be fist-pumping or anything or doing anything crazy, but he needs to be more emotional in a positive way to elicit some reaction from fans and from his team to sort of change the vibe. We all know how big of an effect a quarterback can have on a team's mentality, and I'm not putting all the blame of the season or anything on Wes Lund. I'm just saying I agree. It would be nice to see Wes come out of his shell a little bit more, and he will always be in his shell to some extent. We all know that. He is even keel, like you mentioned. But just give us something. Give us some energy. Give us some vibe. Because right now, it's not there.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. And I think that the other person sort of turning to the defense, that you see emotion and leadership. I might be totally misplaying this because I don't know him that well. He's only been here for 6 months or so. But Hardy Nickerson Jr. looked like he was about to cry during the post. Like, cry out of anger. Mm-hmm. Kind of like he was so mad. You could tell he was seething. And, like, that's the kind of thing that, like, you want to see that. I don't know. Wes, like, again, you're totally right. Wes is totally competitive. It's really, like, that's not a secret. But
and you have Division I Big Ten quarterback, obviously.
It's a prerequisite, absolutely. And Hardy was doing a good job, I thought, of not naming names, because certainly I'm sure he had someone in mind. But he was like, it's hard having this conversation again. People are missing their assignments and missing their slots, and we're killing ourselves. People are making mistakes that can be corrected, and like that's a way of calling your team out without calling your players out, right? If you follow sort of the distinction, like that's what a leader has to do in a lot of ways, is call people out. Call the team out without calling players out, because you never really want to, especially with college kids, you're not trying to really hurt someone's ego. This is your fault. You can't do that. I mean, that works for some people, but not coming from a peer is unlikely to have a big effect. But to see Wes, and I think you're totally right, he's going to be Wes Lund the rest of his life, the same person that he is today. There's no reason for him to change that. But a little bit of coming out of the shell, just a little bit of urgency, just a little bit more of sort of like, okay, guys, like clapping in their faces. Somebody ran, I don't know if it was Zach Grant, but the very end of the play when we were actually down on the field from the press box, come down at the end of the game. and somebody ran sort of an out instead of a button hook on the left side. It was a silly little play, and West threw it looking for the hook, and he was off on the side, and West kind of pointed and sort of, I know it's the fourth quarter and you're already losing, and the game might even be over at that point, but maybe you don't have to do it in front of all of us. Maybe you can do it on the sideline, but get in his face a little bit. Get in that receiver's face and say, you can't miss that. I don't care that it's the fourth quarter. I don't care that we're down by 2 touchdowns. We need that.
Bark at somebody. I agree with you. Even if it's not in your personality, when you're not executing to the level that this Illini offense isn't executing, and they really aren't, then something needs to be done. And I don't think that barking at somebody completely changes it. Okay, now that West is getting aggressive with somebody, they're going to do their job completely right. But, it gets closer to there, and it shows that you care. And then, once again, we're not arguing that West doesn't care. All we're arguing is that, a little more emotion, a good thing. But it's hard to end this show with a smile because there's not a whole lot to smile about around here if you're Illini fans. Not that we are. We're completely unbiased and ethical, but not a whole lot to smile about for Illini sports, but we'll end it with that laugh. It is time for some more emotion from this team. Any closing words, Peter? Jeff? Anyone?
I think the next 2 weeks, Lovie and Joe Spencer and Wes Lunt all sort of said it. This team has to decide how the season's going to go in the next 2 weeks. That's when the fate of the season will be determined in the next 2 weeks, to put it in a dramatic way.
Retweet. That's all I got to say.
My last thing, I think Wes Lunt he needs to step up, lead this team, and he needs to play a lot better. And I think this coaching staff needs to do a better job. Nobody's doing their job right now. I guess that's my point. Nobody's doing their job right now. This football team's not very good. I don't even know if the next 2 weeks.
Simple as that.
It's as simple as that. They're not very good. Sorry, folks, if that ruined your day. If you don't know that by now, then I'm sorry. I was wrong about this team. Maybe you were too. They're not very good. That wraps up our show. We'll be on the air same time tomorrow, Knuckleheads, and all week from 6 to 7 right here on WPGU 107.1. If you missed anything at all from today's show, check out our website, dailyillini.com. Also follow us on Twitter at Illini Drive. Plenty of good stuff there. Drive home safely, everybody. We'll talk to you tomorrow.